Oh, the "Why do you build me a buttercup" line from that classic never hits home quite like it does after the NCAA tournament ends for the Badgers. So, obviously, a very, very difficult and disappointing and gut-wrenching loss for the Wisconsin Badgers versus BYU in the round of 32 game over there in Denver. I think probably like a lot of fans, there was a point in this game that I had kind of accepted a blowout. And don't get me wrong, that's horrible, and it carries its own series of bad things and bad vibes. But there was something uniquely cruel about locking in the way that team did and coming all the way back and getting one more possession with a chance to win. And frankly, who knows how far they could have gone after that. I mean, if we're being honest about it, Alabama comes into that game last night, which was a sort of de facto BYU home game at altitude. BYU probably would have beat Alabama, or certainly would have had a very good chance. So Wisconsin gets through this. Who knows how high it goes? Comes down to a John Tanji shot, and he was fouled on it. I can say with good authority, there's video that exists showing an absolute second-degree assault on his wrist by a BYU player. Doesn't matter, wasn't called. Going to be tough to get a whistle in that moment, unless you're Duke or some, blue blood. And just an agonizing, heartbreaking defeat for these kids. Such a likable group. Really had come together. I feel like they're just lifelong friends in that room. And so, tough night. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's about as tough a loss as you can have as a basketball fan, as a basketball team. It just doesn't. I mean, it wasn't Duke in the 2015 championship game. Yes, it can be tougher, but the vibes were just tough given the storyline of how the game played out. So this isn't going to be a screed on coulda, shoulda, woulda. We already know that. We had a position to win and didn't. It's a forward-looking discussion. And by the way, if you're listening right now, you've hung in there with me for a couple minutes, please like and subscribe. I don't like begging for anything, but the platform that I appear on, YouTube, makes it virtually impossible to get small channels like mine, meaningful exposure in their algorithms, unless they're likes and subscriptions. It's just the way it is. I will be put behind a 1968 Bolivian Pepsi commercial without that kind of thing. So thanks in advance for doing that. But getting back to my point on the Wisconsin Badgers and what this means going forward, I'm going to handle this in a couple ways. I'm going to take the top level thing first. Was this season a failure? Absolutely not. This season was an unqualified success for the Wisconsin Badgers. This team was picked to finish 12th in the Big Ten, which, if you do the math, means you aren't getting in the tournament and probably not getting anywhere near the tournament. What did this team accomplish? This team accomplished third place in the Big Ten over the course of a long season, ranked almost all season, a number 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, a Big Ten tournament runner-up, with a roster that people thought, and a Big Ten Player of the Year candidate, and second-team All-American, and first-team All-Big Ten player in John Taji, who people didn't an eyelash about when Greg Gard picked him up in April. This team was objectively successful. Now, look, you're not going to get me or any Badger fan worth their salt who actually thinks about it to say, wow, I am so excited about a round of 32 exit for the Wisconsin Badgers. The fact that the Wisconsin Badgers did not make the Sweet 16 this year is a gut punch, and they deserve better. This team was better than that. Yes, this is one of the best 32 teams in the country. It is certainly one of the 16 best teams in the country. But as alluded to, sometimes it comes down to just making plays and coming in and playing good defense at the beginning of a game. They just weren't good enough last night to win that game. And we can keep going back to the fact that it's a home game for BYU. There probably was not a hotter team in NCAA basketball coming into this tournament than the BYU Cougars. And you're going to play them at altitude. It's just, this isn't whining, but these are objective facts that have to be put into the barrel. Okay. The game's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin probably wins it. Or they probably don't play BYU. They play someone easier. BYU was so preposterously underseeded. It's just rough stuff. But anyway, getting back to my initial premise, no, the season was not unsuccessful. It was not. It was highly successful. It's sad that didn't go further. I mean, no, you're not going to find someone more disappointed that's not on the team or on the staff than I am. I mean, but unshockingly, we're actually getting fire guard people. It's just staggering to me. Or the Wisconsin is happy with never, ever making the Sweet 16. No one's happy. Chris McIntosh isn't happy. Greg Gard's not happy. John Tonje isn't happy. No one on that team is happy with how that went. But it took kind of an odd series of events for them not to make the Sweet 16 this year. Sad. Unfortunate. But the foundation of what this team has, what this team is, including a substantially refined and modernized offensive system, thanks in part to Kirk Penny and his influence, but overseen by Greg Gard, gives me great hope for the future and this program's adaptability to continue to be a very good team going forward. Does that mean it's going to become an elite team? Until Wisconsin is even close to competing in the NIL amounts with top programs, no, I don't think this is going to be an elite team in NCAA basketball in 2025, 26, 27. That doesn't mean they can't go far in any given year. That doesn't mean they can't consistently win in the Big Ten. They can, because that's how good this program and this staff are at identifying talent and using it. But they just need more NIL resources to consistently be that kind of team that can be a threat in March. It's a fact. So there are some headwinds for Greg Gard. So when I give him, I think, more grace than most people do in the Wisconsin fan community, there's a reason why I do that. Okay, so this is kind of bleeding into my second point, the fire guard thing. The chances, if the resources remain stable, that the Wisconsin Athletic Department has, the chances of Wisconsin going into the coaching pool and pulling out someone with the skill, talent, and record of Greg Gard is substantially under 50%. It's not even a coin flip, people. Outside of Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Purdue, there is not one Big Ten team who has even close to the stability of success that Wisconsin has had over the last decade. The time Greg Gard has been at Wisconsin. Not even close. There have been teams like Illinois who have hit higher heights in given years, but there's been no teams who have won as consistently. That's just a fact. So you're tossing back something that is a known quantity and I believe still has untapped potential for something that is more than likely not going to be as good. That is not smart. Okay? It's not smart. So that kind of bleeds into my third point. What is Greg Gard's upside? Okay, this one is obviously debatable. He's been there for 10 years. I think that's a perfect amount of time to evaluate and stack. In those 10 years, he's had very, very good success, regular season success. You know, 2-time Big Ten Coach of the Year, but usually at or near the top of the conference. A couple of titles. Consistent. I think he's missed 2 tournaments in that 8 years. Two Sweet 16s, and they were early. Of course, that argument goes, he can't do it without Greg Gard's or without Bo Ryan's players, as if Greg Gard didn't recruit those players. Those are Greg Gard's recruits. So it's a little bit silly to me. But let's step back a little bit and do an analysis of Greg Gard's first 10 years versus Bo Ryan's first 10 years. And remember, so we're properly orienting this. Greg Gard and Bo Ryan had different situations at the beginning of their tenure. Okay, I think Greg Gard was handed off a really, really good program. Bo Ryan was handed off a program that had been in the Final Four 2 years before he started. Yes, it was not in the same position, but he didn't get a pumpkin. I mean, this was a program that had been good for a decent period of time, had a tough year under Soderbergh, and then Ryan took over. But let's look at the 10 years, Bo Ryan versus Greg Gard. First 10 years. And before I do this, so I don't have people going apoplectic, Bo Ryan is a better coach than Greg Gard. Certainly through 10 years. He's a Hall of Famer. Is Greg Gard a Hall of Famer? Probably won't be. So I don't want anyone saying, you're saying Greg Gard and Bo Ryan are the same. I'm not saying that. Not saying that. It's irrelevant to the discussion. Okay. Bo Ryan, first 10 years at Wisconsin. He was good. He took the program and elevated them to new heights. 3 Sweet 16s in 10 years. 30% of the time. Did hit in the Elite Eight in 2004 with a really good Badger team with Devin Harris. 60% of the time, his team didn't make it out of the second round. Okay? Including first round losses. This is before we even get to 2013, first round loss to the Ole Miss Rebels, where a substantial portion of the fan base was saying Bo Ryan can't win in March. I'll get to that. Okay. So after that 10 years, there was, a really, really good track record. He's Coach of the Year 2-3 times in the Big Ten. There was nothing about what Wisconsin fans had seen in the first 10 years of Bo Ryan's tenure that would, in a vacuum, have made you think they would be a couple of shots away from winning 2 national titles a few years later. The performance simply wasn't there. It was a really, really good program. But it was not an elite program. And if you would have gotten inside the hearts of Badger fans, 2010, very few of them would have anticipated the things that happened in 14 and 15. I'm going to tell you that. That's a fact. We can try to do revisionist history all we want, but that's not how things work. So let's stack that against Greg Gard's record the last 10 years. It is not as good as Ryan's. Two Sweet 16s, a more the fact that he had 2 marches where he didn't make the tournament. Ryan never had that. The fact that there's some early exits, about the same as Ryan, similar. 6 round of 16, a round of 32, or worse exits. But the difference of performance in March, the first 10 years of Greg Gard's tenure versus the first 10 years of Bo Ryan's tenure, are not nearly as different as Wisconsin fans think in retrospect. It's actually pretty similar. And the mood around Bo Ryan's program, as I noted earlier, after that 10th season, and soon after, they did a Sweet 16 run after that, but then had another very, very early round of 64 exit against Ole Miss in 2013. It was a very, Bo's great. Bo can win regular season titles. Can't do it in March. That's how it was, guys. Some of you are too young to remember this. Some of you don't want to remember it. But if there had been a functioning Twitter fan board entity like we have now, Fire Bo would have been trending all over the place in some of those years. So no, Greg Gard is not as good a coach as Bo Ryan. His performance has not quite reached Bo Ryan's performance the first 10 years. But some of the themes are very, very similar. And while many like to say that Bo handed off a plum program that Greg Gard has ruined. Think of it in these terms: the expectations that Greg Gard inherited from Bo Ryan, based on Bo Ryan's last 2 seasons, are so preposterously unfair and such outliers on what the Wisconsin program had been any other time in the program's history, with the exception of 1941 under Bud Foster, that I do have some sympathy for Gard. Now, we're moving on to my 4th theme about Greg Gard. Look, KenPom has a mathematical thing called luck in the KenPom ratings. It is a little esoteric, a little bit scientific, but it does try to take into account the things that happened that shouldn't have and things didn't happen that should have when evaluating something. Okay. Greg Gard's tenure at Wisconsin, a lot of this is on him, but there have been some really unlucky things that have happened that have him below where he would be if these things had not happened. Chris Chiozza, okay, doesn't make that preposterous last-second shot, and Wisconsin is an Elite Eight team. Greg Gard is an Elite Eight coach. Greg Gard wasn't out there. Everything was coached properly there. I don't know what to tell you. You can't follow Chiozza. But that doesn't happen. Suddenly, Greg Gard, you can still make the arguments he did it with those guys, whatever. But, he's an Elite Eight coach. It's a little bit hard. The next year, it's just very, very different. That's the second year, I believe, that this happened. Greg Gard's an Elite Eight coach. Can never take that away from him. What didn't happen. Okay. The 2020 season, no team in America was playing with better vibes than the Wisconsin Badgers before COVID ended that tournament. No team. I believe they had 7 or 8 consecutive wins leading into that. The vibes were great. They had talent at every position. They had a good bench. Guys like Brevin Pitzel can come in and shoot a 3. That team was playing with great vibes. No, it doesn't guarantee that Wisconsin would have made the Sweet 16 that year, but that was a Final Four kind of team in a way that even this year's team wasn't, you can argue. Never got to play it. So people say, oh, Greg Gard has had 8 consecutive years where he didn't make the Sweet 16. You're throwing in arguably his best team that never got a chance to play the tournament as one of those 8 years. You don't get to do that. You don't get to stack your argument in that way. Another season, we get eventual national champion Baylor in the second round. What? What are you supposed to do? It's tough. Now, then you're going to go to this year. As I've mentioned, I'm not going to waste more breath on it. You got a preposterously talented 6 seed playing basically in their backyard at altitude as a reward for being a 3 seed. Terrible vibes. Terrible vibes. Is an argument Michigan had an easier road to the Sweet 16 than Wisconsin did this year as a 5. Probably true. Now, to be fair, there are things that Greg Gard hasn't been great in March on. I'm not going to say this. The effort and game plan for James Madison in 2024 was atrocious. That was and I think a lot of people were willing to put that on him. I was one of them. I go, Greg Gard can't be insulated from this result. The players went out and played weakly, but not great. There been some other exits that were not great. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that Greg Gard, as a coach, has maybe not been at his best in the NCAA tournament thus far. I think the argument could be made fairly that his first 10 years at Wisconsin, Bo Ryan was not his best in the NCAA tournament. He turned that around, though. Can Gard turn it around? I don't know. Is there a Final Four in Greg Gard's future? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But he certainly should get the chance to show us whether that's possible. And I feel like the evolution I alluded to earlier in the team's offensive system, this is like the first year they've done this. He deserves a chance to see what he can do. I just can't understand the fans that saying he should get fired for reasons I've said before and reasons I just did. But, getting back to my argument, luck has not been on the side of Greg Gard in March. It's a fact. There is nobody who is going to convince me that this team, with Tonje Blackwell and just an incredible locker room full of guys, was not a Sweet 16 team that had just an incredibly bad luck of the way they were put. It doesn't excuse losing. It doesn't excuse going down double digits in the first half against BYU. That's on Gard too. But holy crap, man. I mean, I feel like you play a normal 6 seed. I don't care where you're playing it. Wisconsin's a Sweet 16 team and looking for more. So it's hard not to feel like they've gotten a little bit of a raw shake. And I know you use that. It's been 10 years, therefore 10 years is enough time to evaluate. I get it. But getting back to my premise, 10 years was enough time to evaluate Bo Ryan. Okay. He hadn't done it either. In 1 year, 2004. Hadn't done it. There was nothing about those teams like, oh, we got Frank Kaminsky and Sam Decker coming soon. It's going to turn around. There was nothing in the pipeline that would lead anyone to believe that things were going to be different for the Wisconsin Badgers going forward in year 11, 12, 13, and 14 with Bo Ryan. But he did it. He did it. And I've said enough disclaimers where no one can say, Scary Alvarez thinks Bo Ryan and Greg Gard are the same guy. I do not. One is a Hall of Fame coach. One is a good coach with potential for more. That's where we are right now. But holy shit, reaching into a barrel and picking out another coach thinking he's going to do better than Greg Gard. Good luck with that, people. Especially, again, with the NIL budget as it is. Good luck. Texas going and picking Sean Miller after firing Rodney Terry. Texas spends 10 times as much as Wisconsin on NIL and clearly don't mind having a cheater, a proven cheater, come in and lead their program. Wisconsin, I wouldn't, people are like, oh, Sean Miller. I wouldn't abide Sean Miller replacing Greg Gard. That would be disgusting to me. So Wisconsin also has standards that other schools do not have. They don't have resources that other schools have. The situation is goofy. It is, but it is where we are right now with the Wisconsin Badgers basketball program. So to kind of make a cap on this, I went a little longer than I normally do, but I feel pretty passionately about this. I feel the Wisconsin basketball program is in a very, very good place going forward with its current leadership. Bo Ryan, he's not going to come through that door. But with Greg Gard, Kirk Penny, and some of these other assistants, Reeve Chambliss and some of these other guys, the core coming back for next season is a really solid core. You're not going to have many situations where you have two guys like Blackwell and Winter. At least one of them an NBA guy, the other one an All-Big Ten caliber performer. You're not going to have that coming back most years, guys. Does Greg Gard have work to do in the portal? And does he have an NIL task ahead of him to keep the guys who are there? And to develop some of the guys that you have high expectations for, like Daniel Freitag? Yes. It's going to be a test. But I believe that Greg Gard has, especially the last two seasons, which are the most closely associated with this next one, in terms of NIL and things like that, he has passed with flying colors. He's passed with flying colors, finding guys in the portal to put out a good lineup, to be competitive in the Big Ten without as many resources as other teams who are right around you, or many like Indiana who are far below you in standings with massive resources. Gard's done fantastically in those years. Fantastically. And I believe he'll do it again. Is he going to find a pearl in a colony of oysters like John Tonje again? I don't know. I mean, the good money is he probably won't get quite that player, but it's a little bit chicken or egg with John Tonje as far as I'm concerned. He was a really solid 15-point-a-game type scorer at Colorado State, mid-major, who had some injury problems and kind of flamed out with Missouri in a Power 5 situation. We're going to pretend that Greg Gard and his staff have nothing to do with how good John Tonje was this season? That Greg Gard and his staff had nothing to do with how good Johnny Davis became? Or AJ Storr? or the development shown by other players like John Blackwell or Nolan Winter, you can't. What frustrates me so much about such a percentage of Wisconsin fan base is you are willing to cling to the negatives like a barnacle, but you cannot look at the positives. As I noted earlier, like a 12th place projected team, having you disappointed they didn't make the Sweet 16. You can't have it both ways. So getting back to my theme, Wisconsin's basketball program is in very good shape going forward. I'm going to be very clear here. I think it's in better shape than the football program is by a wide margin. That football program I like aspects of what it's doing, and I'm waiting to see. And I think that there could be some good things coming in the future for that program. But the good things are here right now for the Wisconsin basketball program. There's no question. There's no guesswork for me. It has been proven. It has been proven. Now, what needs to happen next? Maybe they come in as a 7 seed next year and make an Elite 8 run. That would be great, and that would knock all the negative fans off of the boat. But anyway, Wisconsin basketball is in a good place. Do not panic. Do not freak out. Be frustrated with the way that went yesterday. Grieve as you need to. Mostly, I grieve for the personalities and the end of their run together. That was heart-wrenching to see. A guy like Kamari McGee, just one of the all-time most likable Badgers, just a head down and run forward guy, do anything for the team. Taking the time to talk to reporters through tears last night. If you didn't feel something for that, then something's wrong with you. And those tears were not, oh my God, it sucks that Greg Gard was my coach. Another coach would have gotten me further. That wasn't it at all. It was, I was just a part of something incredibly special in that locker room all season. And now it's over. And I'm having a hard time as a human being handling this. You don't have players who look like that and feel like that and express themselves like that unless something is in fact truly special going on in that locker room. And here we are. Greg Gard's the guy for Wisconsin basketball. If you don't like it, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're wrong. Scary Alvarez is out.